might keep the other people waiting. So it's good to start. Yeah.
Cool.
They'll join us.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So I'm just gonna put my video off.
I'll do it for you. You want to switch? Oh, you.
Okay. So hi. So welcome everyone. And so this is Jones, and I'm glad that you're all here and you will make time to do this. So what's going to happen today is really just to get you through the process of how it's going to be in terms of the mentorship program for the next maybe 2 months. So you, as you're aware, you've been partnered with some of our program participants. Some of you have got maybe 2, some have got 3, some have got 4. But just to give you a brief outline of that program is that these people are coming, they are leaders from different organizations, so mainly grantees of OSISA in Malawi, and they're going through what we're calling a sustainability program, whereby we are supporting them to generate business ideas and eventually help them to launch those ventures to be able to generate income to support and sustain their programs. This is one of the requirements for CISA, was that these people should not rely on CISA a lot, so they should be able to start different income generating activities to be able to support at least some departments within their organization. So they have been going through this program for just about 12 months now. And this is the second phase, and the second phase involves actually developing their idea into an actual business, writing a business plan, and eventually launching it. So we are at that level now, whereby they have got the ideas, and what they need now is to actually develop them into like real business plans. And with that, they will need a bit of mentorship in terms from experts to support them to really refine their business ideas into things which are really bankable. So we have Christoph with us here. Christoph is based in Cape Town. So he's one of the program facilitators. So he comes to Malawi. He sticks into the country once in a while to help like facilitate the program. And specifically, why we've asked him for this program is that he runs an organization in Cape Town called Entrepreneurial Planning Institute, where he actually developed one of the tools which we are using in the program called the Flow Canvas model. So some of you may be aware of the business canvas model. So this is something similar to that, but a bit different. So it's very simple and sort of like very efficient to use for people who don't have experience in developing business plans. So Christoph will just take us through the Flow Canvas model. Basically, the program participants are supposed to develop their business plan based on this Flow Canvas model. So in short, that's what's going to happen. So some of you mentors had asked questions in terms of you wanted to have a brief about what the Flow Canvas model really is. So this is just a chance for us to actually, learn the whole process of how it works and then how we can apply and use it for our mentors. So once more, thank you, and then I will be handing over very soon to Christoph, and then he's going to take us. Probably should not. I don't know how much it should take, Christoph. Is it 1 hour or how long?
Yeah, I think an hour should be sufficient.
Okay.
But thank you very much for that introduction, Jones. So Jones, of course, is your Social Enterprise Academy guy there in Malawi, but the team is bigger, and sort of part of the program delivery that Jones was for me to travel to Malawi, but we're still part of the team in support. So sort of you guys have joined the team of supporting these organizations in finding new ways of doing so that they're less reliant on funding. And I think that's the main focus of what we're going to talk about here today too, is how is it easier for us to support them? So in the program, we introduced this tool called the Flow Canvas. In fact, most of them have started building their Flow Canvas plans. It's a one-page plan format. Today I'll explain that to you so that you also understand it. And when they engage with you around their plans, that you also have an understanding of how this tool actually works. It's really, as Joan said, it's really the aim of it is to simplify planning. So it's not too complicated to understand at all. And then also there's a second element, which is also an outcome that the expectation is that the mentors can help the participants with, and that is to develop an action plan, an action guide. So on the one hand, they'll have the Flow Canvas plan, but then to take it a step further and say, if this is the plan, what is the actions that we need to take, and to have a framework to use for. So that's the expectation from OSISA specifically, who is the sponsor of this. They want to see that these organizations turn into social enterprises that has got some healthy income streams. And of course, when you plan, you need to go execute well too. So those are the two elements that we'll cover today: is the Flow Canvas plan and the action guide. So I'm not sure if there's anything else that you guys expect for us to cover today. So I've muted you, and if I can ask that you please stay muted if you're not speaking. But you can unmute yourself anytime you want to speak. We're a small group, so you can interject too. But are there any other, Tione, Joshua, Tadu, Jones, you two, Dominique, I see we've lost Joshua's, oh, there you are. Sorry, I thought that we're missing you now. But are there any other expectations that you have of what we can achieve today? So basically it is to introduce you to the tools that the participants are expected to use and which we would like you to be able to help them with. Thumbs up if you're okay.
Yeah, good.
Tione, you okay? Cool. And Dominique, I can't see you because you switched off your camera, but if you're not speaking, I assume you're okay too. You can also...
No, I'm okay. I'm fine with it.
We can. By the way, I'm not sure if you're on your cell phone, it won't work so well for you. But if you're on a computer, you can open the chat button. If you click on the chat button, it will open a window, so we can also text each other there. So maybe if there's something that you know, sort of while someone speaks, you can actually already post a question there while we go along. But I'll aim to finish up in the hour. So the first bit will be a bit presentation-y, but we can keep it fairly informal, if that's okay with you. By the way, I can also make these, don't stress too much about taking detailed notes. We'll be sharing the content with you so that you can, Jones I'll send it to you to distribute to everyone so you can get an email, a PDF version of the presentation that I'm going to use today. But let me do a screen share. And then we can work from there. So you should be seeing rank from 1 to 5 what helps most for business success now on your screen. Do you? Yes. Cool.
Yes.
So if we ask yourself, you know, which of those do you think is the most important? Work clever and hard, be at the right place at the right time, meet real needs people have, offer something that is different, know why you do what you do. Which of those would you say is the most important in terms of creating business success? Anyone can shout out. You'll have to unmute yourself to shout out, but Joshua, what do you think?
I would think they're all important. It's very difficult to rank them as to which one is the most important.
That's why you're a mentor, not a mentee. Because you're right. They are indeed all five. They are indeed all five very important. You know, sort of. We tend to get stuck in one or two of them. You know, sort of like we normally do. You know, sort of prioritize something that we think is important, as opposed to the real important things. But in general, we tend to get stuck in one or two of those things. But the interesting part here is that these five. Sorry for that flicker. These five areas. Also relate to the 5 questions to all answers, which is what, who, when, how, and why. So basically, if you take those areas of performance that a business needs to attend to, you can reduce it to the 5 questions that are the 5 questions to all answers. Now, this I learned because in my own business history, I started publishing businesses. I was involved. I'm not a journalist myself, but I ran media businesses. And I learned from the journalists that when you write a news article and you want to create a comprehensive picture, you have to answer those 5 questions. And if you've answered the 5 questions, you've given a full picture description. So if you read a newspaper article and in the introduction, all those 5 questions are answered, you know for sure there's a comprehensive picture that you painted. And what we basically do with the flow canvas is to say, if that's the case, then it's not too difficult for us then to move on to say if we want to simplify planning, if we want to have a comprehensive description of a business idea, we need to answer those 5 questions, and that could be described as your business model. So this is really quickly. By the way, I've written a book at the Social Enterprise Academy. There are a few copies of them. Roland has got a few copies of them if you're interested on this. So there's kind of much more detail to it. But if in the flow canvas approach, we say if we can answer those 5 questions clearly, we can describe our business model. Now, those questions seem to be easy to answer, but if it's only about answering those 5 questions, why is it so difficult for us to describe our business? Perhaps we can reflect on it by looking at an image like this. And if you have to say, what does this animal eat? And you look at it from the perspective that you see it now, you may come to a different answer if we flip it on its side. I'll repeat that. Sort of if you look at that animal, which most people see as a frog, and you move to that animal, it's the same picture that's just flipped on its side. You see a horse. So it's kind of the perspective that we have and where we come from. It's kind of like the color of the glasses that we wear, that we're born with. And all of us are born with a certain way of seeing things. So it gets a bit more complicated for us to answer all 5 of those questions adequately if we are naturally so dominating our thinking from the perspective of one of the 5 questions. So you can think of yourself, sort of, are you more a person that's creative, that's in the what question, or are you more a person that's in the detail of completion, that's the how question, for instance, sort of, and all of us come from that different perspectives into it. So what we want to do is to get beyond our own dominant way, our dominant question, and in our business model describe the whole picture. So these are the 5 questions organized in a way, and this is the way that we use. By the way, if you are interested, there's also a personality typing test that you can do. This we didn't really cover with the participants in the sessions that we had with them. They focus more on the business planning side of it. But if you want to understand better how these 5 questions are showing up in your own natural way of doing, you can go to, there's the address there in the right-hand corner, flowcanvas.com/energy, and it will give you free access to an online test that gives you feedback on the 5 questions. There's also some more detail that may help you in understanding these better. But basically, we can say these 5 questions are forming it's like the seasons of the year. If we have 5 seasons, we can say we can start off by looking at spring. So the what question is about the new ideas. So in your business plan or your business planning, you need to answer that question. What is unique about what you do? So if we think of these clients that we're working with here, they're introducing a new project in their organizations that's going to trade, that's going to create income. But we need to have something different, something unique in that we don't only compete in an overtraded market, sort of. So the question that they've been trying to answer is, in what we can offer as an organization, what is it that we can do that offers that uniqueness in the value that we're creating, so that we can, in the end, trade well in that. So it's a bit like spring, it's new ideas. Some people have difficulty in deciding which ideas to pursue. So maybe that's also something that you will be able to help the participants with, sort of if they've got 2 or 3 different ideas to choose from. It's like the farmer that prunes away some of the branches to create a tree that can create good apples for us in the end. Then, of course, from spring we move to summer. It's the time, sort of that there's kind of rapid growth of fruit in the trees. It's the same with us connecting with people. So this is kind of connecting with the right people. Who are the people that you need to support you? Sort of. So if you have that unique idea, the what question, who are the people that need to buy from you or support you in doing that? And to define that. So you can see here we're busy building a business model, but just based on very simple, straightforward questions. And then moving into late summer, which is the 5th season, the when and where is the timing thing. It's about the value that's created. So you know that in summer, the apple grew from very small to full size apple, but it wasn't ripe yet. In summer, it's that time of what is the value that we create. In late summer, the value that we're creating, the timing of it, getting the timing right. So for a lot of these businesses, it's about trading, and for them to understand what it is that they're trading and what the pricing needs to be. So these are the kind of questions that you need to answer when you look at this question. And then moving into autumn, I'm going through this fairly fast. By the way, there's a 10-minute video clip on the Flow Canvas website too that you can watch later on that gives you a bit more detail on this. But the autumn is about the how question, about being organized and effective. So what are the systems that we need in place to make sure that we can deliver on what we promised? And then the last one is the why question, which is like winter. It may seem that winter, nothing is happening, but in fact, it's an important time because we're looking back at how things have been. How did we do? Sort of, did things go well? What worked? What didn't work? Where do we need to improve? And then we can move into the next cycle. So you can see there, that's how the cycle actually emerges in terms of how we organize these 5 questions into something that helps us in improving our business. So we may in the first cycle not have the complete picture, but if we've gone through the cycle and got to winter and asked ourselves how have things been, we can then improve the cycle and go on in that way in improving what we do so that we get better and have more success. So that's the first real kind of distinction that I want to offer you, is simplify planning by just focusing on the 5 questions, because that describes our business model. And if we think about it as seasons, we can see that we can relax into it. We don't have to have all the answers in the first cycle because we're going to go through the cycle and come back later on and improve what we do. So how does that sound? Any questions or comments?
Good.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
Good.
Jones, is that a fair discussion, fair summary of what we've offered with the participants too?
Yeah, fantastic. It is.
Okay, so they've covered this, and I think they responded to it well. They were able to kind of define these for the ideas that they have. So all of them that have been in the workshops, some of them haven't, so you need to note that too. Some of them couldn't attend those sessions, so we can have a bit of a difficulty. But some of them have gone quite far in describing their business model based on this. As I said, there's that flowcanvas.com/energy address that you can go to if you want to actually do the personality typing test, because the interesting thing is that we as people all show up with 1 or 2 of those questions dominant in us and the others less dominant. And therefore, we tend to focus on those more, but we have to focus on all 5. So if you're an outgoing, extroverted person, maybe you're good at networking and connecting with the people, but you also need the completion, the stuff that the introverts are more or better at sometimes. Or if you're an innovative thinker, you also need to get to trade. You need to actually transact. And if you're just going to come up with more ideas all the time, you're not able to transact in the right way that you do. So all 5 of those questions are very important to cover. Okay, so we can say we can expand a bit on that, and this is what we've covered too in the sessions. Is if we talk about what. By the way, I'm going to send you this, sort of, so you don't have to kind of write this down frantically. Creating unique value is what is unique in the value that you create. So in answering that question, it is about unique value. And then who connect with the right people. So it means that there's some people that are wrong. Sometimes we tend to want to connect with everyone, and that's not what we aim to do. We're not going to be successful if we try to connect with everyone. We need to connect with the right people. And in many instances, for the challenge for these organizations is defining that market segment that they want to serve. And then when you connect with them, to turn the value that you create into transactions. So that trade element, and most of these are NGOs, so trade doesn't come natural to them. I must say, sort of that they understand it very well and are moving into that space. But to charge for services and so on is something that they're adjusting to. And then delivering on your promises is the how, and your bigger intention, the why question is, are you contributing towards that bigger intention that you have, is the why question. And you can describe your business model very quickly. In fact, you can describe any project that you aim to do by answering those 5 questions. Okay, so I just wanted to touch quickly on one element that we also covered in the program, and that is that we must pursue opportunities that are within our reach. So there's no use in an organization defining a huge project, but they don't have the capacity to deliver on. And this is the tool I just wanted to share with you. We'll come to this. Creating results by balancing opportunity with capacity. So if your capacity is low, sort of on this area here, aim for opportunities that are aligned so you can deliver on. While if your capacity is high to produce value in what you want to focus on, the opportunities that you need to pursue are much bigger, so that you can operate in that band where you can get good results. A very basic way of describing how we can look at opportunities and capacity and see that if we combine those two and have them in balance, that we get good results. So this we covered with them, but it's just a reminder in all the plans that they do to ask themselves, what is our capacity and are we balancing it with the opportunities that we are pursuing throughout the planning process. It's a bit like a SWOT analysis, which most of us are quite familiar with. Sort of strengths and weaknesses are the internal part of what we do. So that is our capacity, and the opportunities and threats combined, of course, is about what we can pursue in opportunities. So it's kind of like the old tool that we already have, but just in a bit of a different format. I want to get into the planning part of it because that's the flow canvas. These 5 questions are the founding are the building blocks of the flow canvas. Now the thing is with planning, like this renowned planner Mike Tyson said, sort of it's good and well to have a good plan, but sort of when the fight starts, in a lot of instances that plan just goes out of the window because you're now kind of concentrating on what you want to do and things change so quickly and you have to respond quickly and so on. So what we want to do and what we aim with the flow canvas is to have a planning framework that can actually help us while we're in the battle. So it's not this kind of thick document that is a finance plan, that you submit to the bank, but something practical to use. And that's why we use a one-page format in the flow canvas too. So this one page, it's like a page, it's flat, it's got 2 dimensions, up and down and left and right, and it's a canvas. So it's a painting that we create. I'm just going to run you very quickly through this and then we can discuss in more detail, sort of how it works. So this is the framework that they're using at the moment to describe the project, the income generating project that they're setting out to launch, or some of them actually have already launched. So like with the painting at the top, we put the what question. Remember, we've got the 5 questions to answer and we want to now space them onto our canvas. We're going to create a painting. The what question is the idea. It's kind of all the, sort of the ideation, the creative thinking about what is different in what we can do and come up with solutions for problems. But then we need to translate that into the when and where, the detail of the action. So it's like the ground that we paint at the bottom of the painting. The value that we create and how we're going to transact in that comes at the bottom. And then on the right, it is about how we describe the people that we connect with, those that must support us, the who, and on the left, the how, the detail of how we organize ourselves internally so that we can deliver on our promises. And that leaves us with why in the center. And it's as basic as this. If you can draw 4 lines on a piece of paper or a whiteboard, or open a 9-cell spreadsheet, or whichever format you want to do, you can quickly do your flow canvas plan, because it ends up like this, that we have the 5 questions and in the corners, it's kind of the overlap between those. So it goes from if you look at the top, the what, the uniqueness of what we do, to connecting that uniqueness with the right people, and then connecting the people with the value exchange, the when and where of the value exchange, and then connecting that with how we organize ourselves so that we form this cycle of constant improvement. So there we've kind of spaced the 5 questions onto a flat surface, giving us 9 planning elements that we need to attend to. And that forms a cycle that allows us to plan for the very next cycle and then come at the end of that cycle and ask what is working, what is not working, where do we need to improve. So that's the basic elements of, what is nowadays known as lean startup, sort of where you go out and plan something, then do it and review it. And we understand that you can't come up with a master plan, a blueprint that you're just going to implement. You need to go out into the marketplace and test your assumptions specifically, get feedback, maybe have a minimum viable product that you can take out and test with people to see how they respond, and then adjust so that you know that you're actually addressing the need out there as opposed to what you've assumed to be the need. So this is all the background, sort of, and that forms a cycle in the end, sort of, so you can get better and better at what you do. Plan, do, review. It's not kind of chasing your tail. It's kind of like a spiral where you achieve your purpose in the end, and we call that the flow cycle. I'm just running through this very quickly because I want to come to this, because this is the 9 we've answered the 5 questions, and we say if we flatten it out onto a surface, we've got 9 elements to plan around, and that is what the flow canvas is. So I want to introduce that to you quickly so that we can actually go in more detail in the time that we have available to address any questions that you may have around the use of the flow canvas itself. And by the way, we also need to remember to talk about the action guide that they need to do. So can I proceed? I don't want to assume that we're all here. Is it okay? By the way, if there are questions, you can just type them into the chat too, and so we know we've recorded any questions that there are. So in the 9 elements, we start with the first one in the middle. It's called purpose. Old style thinking is that you have a mission and a vision. Sort of a lot of companies just start talking about purpose. What is our purpose? And they define that well. And what you ask there is, why does your business exist, or why does this project that you're launching exist? So it's not only about making money, that's the outcome of it, but what is the intention that you have in terms of the difference that you can make through this? So making money is an element of an outcome, but it's not the reason for you to exist. It's more about the longer term impact and the bigger objectives that you have, like mission and vision. And the difference that you make and the legacy for entrepreneurs, specifically entrepreneurial people, it's also about themselves. It's the legacy they want to create in what they do in business. So that's fairly straightforward. Sort of what we answer there is that bigger intention that you have with what you try to achieve. And we call that purpose, and we put that in the middle of the plan, which then allows us to move up to focus. Remember, focus at the top. At the top, it's about the what question. So focus really is about what is your unique idea, and not only within the niche that you operate. So what your idea to have, like let's say to have a hairdresser, it could be an idea, but that's not very unique. Sort of. So if you have a hairdresser that specifically focuses on a specific hair type, that sort of a style that people want, and you aim at a specific market segment, sort of where that style is prevalent or needed, then your chance of success is a bit more. So can we define what we do, not only in the broad category of the industry that we operate in, but also some other elements in terms of the uniqueness that we have. So obviously we want to focus here on something that we're great at already. So for these organizations, the question is, in deciding what we're going to do, let's see where we can create value already. To be different is important, so that we don't have to compete on price. We want to align it with our passions, and if we can focus on benefit rather than just the technical side of things, our likeliness of defining something that's useful for other people is better. So what are the benefits that people get if we can cover that in the way that we describe our focus? That may also help. Okay, and then I'm going to do one, and then I'm going to pause for a moment, which is transactions, which sits at the opposite side. It's kind of so if the what question is the ideas at the top, the manifestation of that idea in the ability to trade sits at the bottom. That's where the transactions sit. And transactions are basically about where and at what rate do you exchange value. So, it's an exchange. I pay $1 for a can of beans. $1 can of beans, that exchange, sort of, sometimes the exchange is not money, I give my data to Google, and they sell my data to advertisers. So my exchange with Google is I give data and they give me useful information back for my search, and they then take my information and they go sell it to the advertiser who pays them. And there's a money transaction, money for the information about the audience. So sometimes it's not a money exchange. It could also be other value that's exchanged. So shall I just keep going and then we discuss this at the end if you have the full picture? Just nod if you're okay with that. It's okay. Okay, so please feel free to interrupt me if there's a pressing question. So everyone says, Dominique says, please proceed to there. So when and where are you selling and trading? What is your price list? Sort of how do you determine the price? What are the discounts you're allowed to give? How many transactions do you need to do to get to break even? And how are you going to collecting money? You know, sort of what is the contract if it's a cash business, or you know, sort of do people buy an account and things like that? And how do you keep records of that? So we've gone from the purpose in the middle to say, if that's the purpose, how can we achieve this purpose? We can do it through the focus, through what it is that we want to achieve, by transacting based on the uniqueness that we offer. There's a certain value exchange here at the bottom. And now we can say on the right-hand side, we're asking who are the people that will do it with us. So we're going to define who the people are that must support us in our transactions. And it's customers, of course, the ones that we're meant to serve. We want to know who they are, you know, typical kind of audience, market segmentation. We can say who are the most important ones. We've covered this, by the way, in the course too, to categorize them a bit so that we know we can focus on those A category ones that are the most important. And sometimes there's more than one group that we need to cater for. So don't just assume that we define one group, but there may be different customer segments that we need to attend to. And if we know who they are, we can say there in the right-hand top corner, we can connect those people with the idea. Yeah, that's what attention is about. Attention is about how and where you get noticed. So you'll notice here that we're very specific in the flow canvas in asking this question, not as what is your marketing plan, but rather how do they notice you? So that we don't fall into the trap of starting to define grandiose kind of marketing schemes and, you know, things that we assume you need to have. All we really want to know is, where do people first notice you? So, you know, if I can take that example of the hairdresser, perhaps it is just by people walking past, you know, sort of, so you don't need a website, for instance, if you're a hairdresser necessarily, but except if you then go into a different marketplace where that is important. Or if you perhaps if you run a business-to-business service, it is going to be on the web, because someone is going to say, I need this kind of service, and they're going to Google and find your, so then the first place they notice you is on the web, you know, sort of. But the real question here is not what is my marketing plan. It is more, sorry, which way am I going now? Attention, yeah. How and where are you noticed? So we must show up where the audience is. We must stand out so they remember us. We must put ourselves in front of them. And yeah, the things like image and business name and, you know, sort of the colors that we use and so on are, of course, important too. But the most important thing is, how do they first notice us? Not how do they transact with us yet, just how do they notice us? And if they've noticed us, we can say, how do we then turn that interest that they've shown in us into a transaction? So we want to make it impossible for them to say no to the transaction. Sometimes it means we increase their pain by explaining the problem better to them. You know, it's like going to the dentist. You sit there for a checkup and nothing is wrong, but as soon as he puts that instrument in your mouth, all of a sudden you feel the pain, and he says, okay, you've got option A, B, or C. Which of these options do you want to follow? You know, sort of, and you're not going to say do nothing because you're now in pain. You know, sort of, so to increase the pain is sometimes, it feels a bit counterintuitive to say we're going to get people to buy from us by increasing their pain, but that is sometimes part of the way that you take their hand and explain to them how you can help them to solve their pain. Social proof helps, of course, here a lot too, you know, testimonials. So this is where things like the likes on a Facebook page becomes important, or the comments, or in whichever way, you know, through word of mouth, you can get people to talk about what you do so others can buy from you. One can, of course, use guarantees and so on, you know, sort of for specials and discounts to help people along in getting to the point that they do the transactions. And if we understand what the objections are that people normally have, you know, sort of, so let's think about, if you think about maybe someone that makes a product like ladders, wooden ladders, and they get to the point where they sell to people and they start to understand the same kind of objections come up all the time. People always say wooden ladders are too heavy to carry around. Then you can have an answer for that objection to wooden ladders are more stable, so they don't fall over. There's a, you know, sort of an answer to that objection. So if you understand what the objections are that people may have to buying from you, you can address those too. And that will lead us to the point where we can say, if we, on the right-hand side of the plan, if we show up and stand out and create a desire, we're going to have good transactions. So that's the right-hand side of the flow canvas plan. It's about engaging with your audience. It's about the external, like standing out in the external marketplace. And as I said earlier, if we use the image of a target, we can clearly see that in the bullseye is the A's. If we understand the A audience, the people that are really the desired, that 20% that makes up 80% of the business, we should focus most of our attention on them. Okay, we can ask some questions. How will we know who they are? Which places are they? How will I stand out to be noticed by them, and so on? These are the kind of questions for the different categories of audience that we have. Okay, we've got about 20 minutes left in the hour, so I'm just cognizant of that. I want us to have good time to discuss things too. But are there any questions on this? I see why transactions fall under where we had when and instead of how. Okay, so that the transactions one is it's an interesting one because the when and where question is about, it's in fact about value, the exchange of value at a certain time and place. So if you think of traders, for instance, people that trade in the stock exchange, you know, like George Soros is a good example, the one that's funding OSISA. He trades on the stock exchange. He kind of naturally understands when something is going to increase in value or decrease in value, and then he trades based on that. So that when and where, time and place, is a time and place thing that's related to value, and it's the exchange of value. So to know when the value is right. So if you think of that late summer season that we spoke about earlier, it is when that apple is already full size, but you need to know when it's ripe. You can't pick it too early, because then it's still green. People aren't going to get sick in eating it. You can't pick it too late because it's going to be overripe and it's going to rot before you can sell it. So this when and where question is one about value exchange within time and place, and that is why transactions fall into that. So I'm not sure, Tahone, if I'm answering your question fully there. There's, of course, in all of this element, remember, this is a canvas, it's a painting, so things are sometimes a bit fluid too. So we don't have to get stuck into categorizing things too narrowly. But can I move on to the left of the canvas?
Yes.
You okay to move on to the left?
Yeah.
Yeah, proceed, please.
Okay, so you got that, so we start off by saying purpose is what drives us. This is our bigger picture. This is our big intention. Focus is about the uniqueness of what we do. If we have that uniqueness, we can say attention is about where people notice us. Audience is about defining that the right people that we want to notice us. Desire is about when they've noticed us, we want to take their hands into doing the transactions. In transactions, we need to be really clear about the value exchange. What are we selling and what are we getting back, giving and gaining? And then we get to the left-hand side of the canvas, which is about our internal organization. Remember, this is about the how question is sitting on the left here. And here, delivery is straightforward. This is perhaps the easiest one in a way, because it's all about the resources and people and money that we need. So it's describing what are the things we need to do those transactions. And it's premises, equipment, etc., the money we need, the budgets, the skilled people, important thing, and all the logistics, the systems that we need to put in place so that we can deliver on what we've promised. So as I said, this is fairly straightforward. Operations, this is logistics. Yes, Jones?
Sorry to interrupt you, but before we proceed, don't believe we just attend to question from Tuone. So he's asking why transaction falls under where we had when instead of how. So maybe we just take that before we proceed.
I've tried to answer it just now when I explained about our value exchange sits with, the example of the apple ripening and knowing when it's the right thing. So, but the important thing there is because the other questions are more easy to kind of link to the key business model element, but when and where is time and place, when and where, but we must remember it's about the value that is in when and where. So that's before we can actually go into the detail of organizing things, which is how. We want to know what is the value that we're creating so that we can put the right stuff in place, the right how stuff in place to deliver on that. So that is why we first look at when and where is the value exchange and then move on to how. If there's still unclarity, we can bring you in to speak just now too, if that's okay. But so shall I just complete the whole system? Because then if we've delivered, we can move on to culture, which is also about how. Culture is the opposite of audience. If you can see that, culture is the people that sing from the same hymn sheet internally. Audience are the fans that we have out there in the marketplace. So culture is how do we organize ourselves? We want to make money. We want to be sustainable. So we need to look at things like, what is our legal organization? Are we registering? And for these organizations that you're working with, this is quite an important one. You know, are they trading within the organization, setting up a unit within the organization? Are they actually launching a private company that they may own, that the NGO may own? That's an important question to answer. Compliance is also an important thing here. You know, sort of. So if you're gonna run a restaurant, then there's probably some health and safety things to think about. In most businesses, they do laws and so on, tax and so on to think about. What is the reporting lines? You know, sort of who's accountable, who's kept accountable? How often do we meet to plan what we do and to report back on what we do? And then, of course, also the unspoken rules. It's not only about those things that are policies, formal policies, but also things that that are informal. We just work together in certain ways. Okay, so that's culture. And then the last one is improvement. Now, improvement is a bit different from the others, because in improvement, what we try to do is we want to identify some measures, some metrics that we can follow, that we can gauge to show us, are we doing well or not? So how are we doing? We say, let's identify a few steps in the process, in this whole cycle that we have on our plan, in a few of the elements. The key ones, and we say which percentages, numbers, or currency values can we identify as targets for us to monitor, so that we can identify the bottlenecks to solve. So as we go from one cycle to the next, we can quickly ask, you know, we have a target sales figure. What was it? Did we achieve it? If we use a Facebook page, we want so many new followers in the month. Did we achieve it? Not, then we must do something differently. And that allows us then to improve for the next cycle, going to the next cycle, so that we can see this kind of evolving spiral of getting better and better at what we do. Okay, so that's very quickly the 9 elements of the Flow Canvas plan, and this was introduced to the participants during the program. And as I said earlier, those that attended had the opportunity to actually get going with their plans too. So here's the idea of the spiral of success that we can create if we use this. Okay, just to show you, there's a website where more detail is available on this. You know, so you can have a look there. There's a lot of free stuff there too. There's a video clip, as I said earlier, on one of the pages, on the tools page, talking more about how this tool actually works. But it is as simple as drawing 4 lines on a piece of paper, or using a framework like this, so that you can answer the 9 straightforward questions. So shall I stop there and let's talk about this for a moment? Does that sound like something simple enough to use, or what questions do you have in terms of supporting others in applying this to themselves?
My question would be,
yes, Joshua.
So I think I'm looking at it as one of a great way of organizing your idea internally. How does this work to prepare them to actually say, give this plan? I know it's not an extensive business plan, but it helps having them gather all of their ideas.
I think we lost you there for a moment now, but I think I got the gist of your question. So obviously a tool, listen, we can't just have one tool in our toolbox, eh? Sort of, so a one-page plan format is really kind of limited in terms of the extent of the detail that you can put on there. And if you communicate, for instance, with others that want more detail, then maybe a document format planning, business plan is a better idea. But what this does is it firstly helps you to clarify your own understanding of it. And we've, for instance, shown participants they're gonna do a pitch at the end of the program too, to explain the business idea. And we've shown them how they can use this one-page planning format then to go and plan and put the information into their pitch. So you can use the one-page format to help you in different other things too. including to communicate with others, sort of. So if you quickly want to communicate to someone what your business idea is about, you can use this format. But I'm sure if you're going to submit a finance plan to the bank, or you're going to submit the plan to your board, you also need other elements in your plan that may have more details. So you can see this picture that's painting the headline, the summary of what it is about. So we've lost Joshua now, so you'll have to listen to the recording to get that answer. Hopefully he'll come back. So who's that? Dominique, is that you wanting to say something? Tadu, do you have any questions at this point? No more questions right now. Do you think you can, when you sit down with your mentees, you'll be able to guide them? It's very straightforward. It's not complicated at all.
Yes.
Dominique can go first.
Yeah. For me, I think it's a good tool. It's well simplified. I don't have difficulties to get things around and to have a more focused. I think it's one page and it's more focused and it's straight to the point. So it's much easier to use.
Yeah. So what I haven't spoken about much is that if one does that test, the personality typing test, you can really see which elements of the plan you are naturally more stronger in. So which are the elements that, as I said, we haven't really covered that much in the program, but it is something to consider too. So Tione, what you wanted to mention something too?
Yeah, mostly the main question that maybe we'll have to have more discussion on is about changing the culture of the enterprises organizations so that they become profitable or sustainable, which is, I think, the key to all this. Because if in an organization they have been used to doing business as usual, or where maybe, for example, these have been relying on funding, external funding, to sustain their enterprises, to change the whole culture or the style of leadership, that would really be a bit of you really need to have a lot of energy to do that. No. So that's where I see this being important too, because after having done all this, at the end of the day, what you need is how do you drive that agenda forward. No. So I think that's where everything rests to me, the way I look at it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a key. Without that, there's no movement forward, because you're going to get stuck in arguments about what we're going to do and not do. So that there is that element on the plan, the culture element on the plan, where, but I think you did right. Sort of non-profit organizations traditionally find it difficult to actually move into trading. But I must say, I've been fairly impressed by the group of people that are participating here. Sort of they've made they maybe all of the organization isn't there yet. Sort of they kind of the ones that understand it. But they equipped to carry this message forward. So when it comes to planning for that, attending to that element, sort of how to carry the message forward inside the organizations is perhaps an important element to also put into the plan. You did right there, I think.
So, yeah. On the same, after having developed they are coming up with these business ideas. Understand sometimes some of these ideas to be implemented, you might need a bit of like a push in terms of initial investment or resources, and if these have been non-profit making organizations, that means that whatever they were receiving was supposed to be spent. So how do you look at the source of this initial boost that would be required to catalyze the activities so that they become commercially viable? Do they have to generate themselves, or there is somewhere else where they have to get it? How do you look at it?
Yeah. So of course, in the planning element of delivery, there's that: what budget do we need, and where's it going to come from? So the source of the funding is perhaps not key to describing the business model, but there's a cost to that source. So if they get a grant to actually start a unit in their business to trade, that's great because it's free money. But if they have to kind of loan it somewhere, or if they have to take resources away from some places to be spending it on creating a unit for income generation, then that of course is a different story. So it may not sit in a specific element in the plan. It may be kind of a overarching consideration, I'm not sure myself. But as I said earlier, remember this tool that we're talking about here, the flow canvas, it's like a painting. So there's a bit of creativity in the painting too, so we can put in things that we believe to be important there too. But the source of funding. So for some of them, with ideas that they have, they don't know yet where the money is going to come from if it comes to capital that they need for equipment and so on. So those are things to look at too. And it may even be that they need to define in their audience the support they need from, financiers or funders. And it's not only about describing what we're going to do in terms of the audience that we're selling to, it's also describing about the other supporters we need. So that's where in the audience element, you can typically have a buying audience, the clients, what it is that we do. We've got a spring on our land, we bottle water and we sell drink water. So we've got customers buying from us. But we also have...
Yes, I just want to add, I think from my understanding, what you're trying to do is come up with a business model, a wake-up idea or a living idea that can even generate financing for itself. Because after doing all the planning, what we're trying to do is to make sure that we have done all the homework, so that we are able to secure finance, we are able to reach customers, we're able to make it profitable or sustainable by itself. So all what we are is to come up with something that is sellable to our audience. Our audience might also include financiers or investors that can also be interested in the idea itself.
Exactly. And then you need, in your plan, you actually need to distinguish between the buying clients and the financiers.
Yes.
In the attention element too, and in the desire element too. So I think this will be common in many of the instances that we're talking about here, that they've got more than one group, two groups of supporters, of audiences they need to cover. Very important to note. So Tadu, are there any... I see Frank is trying to join us. I hope, Frank, you may have to look at the recording to get the full picture, but we'll come to you just now. Tadu, are there any questions that you have at this point in time? Are you cool? Okay, I just want to, there's one last thing I need to show you quickly. We are kind of on the hour too. So if we go back to the action guide is the next step. So basically what we do here is just to say, if we take these 9 elements, these 9 planning elements, step by step, we can start off with the first element, let's say focus. And we can say in focus, what outcomes are there defined in that focus? And what are the activities and tasks that we need to complete? And we go through all 9 the elements in doing that, so that we've got a whole long list of activities and tasks. And then we can say, okay, per outcome, what needs to be done? Those are the activities and tasks. How will it be done? By whom will it? It's a typical kind of framework just to do an action guide. By whom will it be done? By when will it be done? What's the money that we need? And we can keep going, So for instance, here's an example of a website. Some of the activity, the outcome is to do a website. So this is the first website. With the 4 steps, we must appoint a web designer, we must compile a project outline, we must define the content, we must sign up with an ISP, we must monitor and improve the web designer's work. These are kind of 4 activities, and we can then put that into a framework, like this. So the outcome is the website. What must be done? Those are all the things that must be done on the left in the first column. How, by whom, by when, and what is the budget that we need to actually complete that. So if we take all the outcomes and we define all the activities for each of them, we have a whole action guide, a whole action plan that we can implement. So basically, it's just taking it element by element, identifying the outcome, what are the tasks and activities that we need to add in there, and then we set to actually do the action guide. And that is something that OSISA also wants to see them do, to not only do the one-page plan, but taking it into action guide to say who's going to do what by when, and what are the money implications of that. Also not too difficult, straightforward, but yeah, so you can have kind of like a picture like that where you describe all your outcomes and the activities that you need to complete it with. So any other questions? Or Jones, if you want to come in, you know, sort of any guidance here in terms of what we need to discuss till here?
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I've just been keenly flowing and giving you a chance to actually, you know, take the whole program through. But otherwise, just want to welcome Frank as well. He had some problems logging in, but otherwise he managed. I'm sure he has missed some most of the things, but just to show you that we are going to share the whole presentation with everyone, so that should be fine as well. We also missed Gertrude and Maria, so we'll still be sharing everything with them as well. Otherwise, we can continue if there's anything else.
Yeah, so I've recorded this, by the way. So what we can do is we can put it onto YouTube, and then you can share the link. You can also rewatch it if you want to. For those that, Frank, you'll be able to see from the start of the meeting on the YouTube channel. I'm not sure. Would you guys, after having had a session or two with your mentees, would you like to have a kind of a Q&A that we can just get together for another hour and you can shoot all the questions that you have? Would that be useful for you in the similar format that we have now? Jones, we haven't discussed this, but I'll give an hour. I'll donate an hour to that.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. Well, I'll still, I think, give it up to them, the mentors. If that's what they want, it can be done. But otherwise, they're also free to just even shoot you an email as well.
You can do that too.
Just, yeah. So if maybe they don't have that, they just shoot an email. So you can decide whether you want to have another session like this to as a follow-up, or anytime you can just send an email and then you can clarify a few things.
Cool. Any outstanding questions then, or shall we wrap it for today? So I'm sorry I didn't meet you guys when I was in Malawi, but I hope there's a next time. Face to face. We've met here online today, but we can meet face to face then.
Yeah. All right. I don't see any questions in the chat room as well, so that should be fine. I also haven't met some of the people here as well. I know Tony, I know Frank, but Joshua and Tadu we haven't met, and Dominic as well. So hope we can meet also sometime. Dominic says it's good. So for me, I think there isn't anything. It's just I'll just send a summary email as well. And from you might have seen also from the email that I sent in terms of the revised due dates. So please just keep in mind that you are free to take your sessions. You've got 5 sessions which you can take until end of July. And the idea is that these sessions should focus on helping these people in terms of how they can grow their business, but primarily also looking at planning using the program model. So should you have any questions anytime, just feel free to ask either myself, or you can forward them to Aggie, and then ask people to link them up to Christoph. Otherwise, thanks so much for your time. I'm seeing Tony already making his way, so I understand maybe time is an issue. So we'll close it there and then just wish you the best, and thank you so much.
Nice meeting you guys. Cheers, everyone, and good luck with the mentees.
Thank you.
We are glad we have met on this platform.
Yes.
Cheers. Thanks, Dominic.
Thank you so much. Very late, but got some ideas. Thank you so much, guys.
Yes.
Thanks, Joshua. Thanks, Tony. Bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Cheers, everyone. Bye-bye.